know who this guy is? Hero is an Eternian legend.
If, like me, you're also a longtime fan of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe franchise, we finally have something major to talk about again. Nearly 4 decades after the 1987 live-action film, Masters of the Universe has returned to theaters with a new live-action movie, featuring major names like Nicholas Galitzine, Jared Leto, Alison Brie, Camila Mendes, and Idris Elba. But for longtime fans, it's not surprising at all. The franchise has a long history of delayed, canceled, reworked, and abandoned projects, going all the way back to the original toy line era. And among all those lost projects, the one that still fascinates me the most is a little-known, unproduced animated series called Hero, Son of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Pitched in the 1990s, the show was supposed to introduce the beloved franchise to a new generation of kids by moving the story forward instead of simply rebooting it. It would have given us the next hero after He-Man, older versions of familiar characters, new villains, new creatures, and a generational passing of the Power Sword. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into this unproduced show and explore the strange journey of Hero across the history of the franchise. So without further delay, let's get into it. The first Hero was not He-Man's son. Before moving forward, let's look into the origin of the Hero, because this is where things get a little confusing. The character was not originally created as He-Man's son. Hero first came out of Mattel's late 80s Powers of Grayskull concept, which was planned as a major expansion of the MOTU toy line. This version of Hero was meant to lead a prequel story set in Pre-Eternia, the ancient past of Eternia, long before the events of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Mattel designed a prototype action figure for Hero around 1987 as part of the Powers of Grayskull toy line, but the line was canceled before Hero's figure could be mass-produced. Only a few related toys reached the shelves, including the dinosaur creatures Tyrannosaurus Rex, Spinotops, and Turbodactyl. The giant figures Titus and Megator were released only in limited foreign markets, especially Italy, making them extremely rare collector pieces today. In this original concept, Hero was not the son of He-Man. He was a powerful wizard from the ancient past, sometimes described as the most powerful wizard in the universe. The planned story would have explored the origins of He-Man's powers, the ancient world of Eternia, the secrets of Grayskull, and the magical forces that shaped the franchise. This version of the Hero had the civilian name Gray and would transform into Hero through a magical phrase. He represented the ancient source of heroic power before Prince Adam ever raised the Sword of Power. Although we don't know everything about what the full show or toy line story would have been, we do get a glimpse through the mini-comic The Powers of Grayskull, The Legend Begins. In that story, He-Man and the Sorceress travel back in time to Pre-Eternia to explore the past. Unknown to them, Skeletor also reaches Pre-Eternia and helps King Hiss attack a village using cybernetic dinosaurs. He-Man tries to interfere but quickly gets overwhelmed until Hero arrives and helps him with his powerful magic staff. That one mini-comic gave fans a taste of what the Powers of Grayskull direction could have been. Ancient Eternia, dinosaurs, snake men, giants, magic, sci-fi technology, and a heroic wizard who existed long before He-Man. Honestly, that had all the potential to become a slick sci-fi fantasy prequel that could have expanded the mythology in a big way. But unfortunately, the project never became a full animated series, and Hero's future in the franchise became uncertain almost immediately. The 1988 Hero, Son of He-Man concept. After the Powers of Grayskull idea failed to take off, another version of Hero appeared in development. Around 1988, a separate concept called Hero, Son of He-Man was pitched. This version was very different from the ancient wizard concept. Here, Hero was actually the son of He-Man and Teela. The Soren reportedly followed him on the planet Primus, where he'd been sent as a child when Eternia was in danger. As he grew up, Hero would face Skeletine, the son of Skeletor. Some material has linked Skeletine's mother to Shadow Weaver or Evil Lyn, depending on the version being discussed. But the most important thing is that he was clearly designed as the next generation villain opposite Hero. Skeletine even had a vehicle called the Skelecycle, which is exactly the kind of ridiculous and wonderful 80s toy line idea you would expect from this franchise. What made this project especially strange is that it would reportedly have combined animation with some live-action elements. That may have been one of the reasons it never moved forward. The concept was ambitious, but it also came at a time when the original MOTU craze was fading quickly. Despite the show not being picked up, certain futuristic and space-based ideas from this era of development would eventually help shape the new adventures of He-Man, where He-Man left Eternia and went to the planet Primus. So while this version of the Hero never got his own series, some of the creative DNA around him didn't completely disappear. The 1996 Lou Scheimer version. The most detailed and fascinating version came in 1996 when Lou Scheimer, the producer behind the original Filmation He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon, pitched another Hero series to DIC Entertainment. This show was titled Hero, the Son of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It was intended as a direct continuation of the original animated series, but with a new young hero at the center. Because the popularity of the original franchise had faded, Scheimer wanted to pitch this sequel as the next big evolution of MOTU. Unfortunately, DIC didn't move forward with it, and the show never went beyond its series Bible. But the ideas in that Bible are fascinating. This version was set years after the classic era. Prince Adam had already become King Adam, and Teela had become Queen Teela. Eternia had moved forward, the old heroes had aged, and the time had come for a new generation. The central character was a human boy raised in the wild by a she-bear cat after being abandoned in the jungles of Eternia. He was clearly inspired by Tarzan, with heightened senses, agility, animal communication, and survival skills. He had no proper human name at first and lived more like a child of the wilderness than a prince. After the death of his bear cat mother, he was eventually taken in by King Adam and Queen Teela, who named him Dare. Although Dare initially believed he was an orphan, the show planned to keep the identity of his real parents a secret until late in the series. Lou Scheimer later revealed that Dare's mother would have been Adora, known as She-Ra, He-Man's twin sister. That changes everything. It means this version of Hero is not biologically the son of He-Man despite the title. He was adopted by Adam and Teela, but secretly descended from the She-Ra side of the family. That would have made him part of the royal bloodline and connected him to both He-Man and She-Ra's legacies. The story that never happened. When we look at the detailed pitch material, the regret of what could have been becomes even harder to ignore. The show would have brought back several fan-favorite characters after the era of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. King Adam now ruled Eternia with Queen Teela by his side. Skeletor had been banished to the frozen lands with the help of the sorceress, but of course he wasn't gone forever. Soon Adam learns from the sorceress that a nameless boy is destined to become the successor to the power sword of Grayskull. He-Man, along with his trusted allies, begins searching for the boy beyond the mountains of fire. Meanwhile, Skeletor frees himself from exile and begins gathering his old army again, including villains like Evil Lyn, Beastman, Merman, and Trapjaw. Once Skeletor learns about the mysterious boy, he decides he must find him first and corrupt him before He-Man can fulfill the prophecy. That sets up the central conflict. Good and evil both racing to claim the next hero. Skeletor gets to the child first and lies to him. He tells the boy that He-Man was responsible for his mother's death. The lie works and the child swears revenge against He-Man and his allies. After surviving Skeletor's traps, He-Man and his friends finally reach the boy and another battle between good and evil begins. During the conflict, the child realizes Skeletor's true nature after his bird friend Kraven is nearly killed by the skull-faced villain. This becomes the emotional turning point. The boy rejects Skeletor and joins He-Man. After their victory, He-Man takes him to Eternia and gives him the name Dare because of his bravery. But Adam is not instantly comfortable with passing on his legacy. He's still powerful, still capable, and still very much He-Man. The idea of being replaced creates real conflict for him. That's actually one of the best parts of the pitch. The story's not just about Dare becoming a hero. It's also about He-Man learning how to let go. When Skeletor returns again, He-Man finally chooses to share the power of the sword with Dare, turning him into Hero. Dare's bird companion, Kraven, would also transform into Battlebird, giving him his own animal partner in the same spirit as Battle Cat. Hero's transformation phrase was planned as, "I am Hero, son of He-Man. I have the power." That line alone tells you exactly what the show was going for. It was trying to recreate the magical transformation energy of the original while making it belong to a new generation. The new heroes and villains. Hero was not going to be the only new character. The show Bible introduced Kayla, a fierce teenage warrior and Man-at-Arms' niece. She would have been a champion of martial arts and swordplay, and she was also planned as Hero's eventual love interest. There were also new heroes like Airbag and Forklift, who had very toy-friendly names and powers. Their designs were clearly meant to create a fresh lineup of action figures while still feeling connected to the original world. But the old supporting cast would not have disappeared. Orko, Man-at-Arms, Man-E-Faces, Ram-Man, and other familiar characters were expected to return in different roles. Some would have been older, some would have been mentors, some would have helped bridge the gap between the classic generation and the new heroes. Skeletor would remain the main villain, but the show would also introduce new enemies like Bug-Eye, Tongue Lasher, Mistletoe, and Sawtooth. And yeah, those names are very Masters of the Universe. weird, literal, and somehow perfect. The tone of the show would have been similar to the original cartoon, with Hero, Kayla, Battlebird, and the others going on adventures, while Skeletor tried to conquer Eternia and claim the power of Grayskull. But there was also a coming-of-age angle built into the story. Hero would have to adjust to civilization, royal responsibility, friendship, growing up, peer pressure, and the pressure of living up to a legacy he didn't ask for. That could have made the show more emotionally layered than people might expect. Tex, Rex, and the future of Eternia. One of the coolest ideas in the 1996 Bible was the introduction of high-tech robotic creatures called Tex. These highly intelligent robots were the result of future technological development in Eternia. They could be used for transportation, battle, and adventure. Like the droids in Star Wars, Tex could talk and become characters in their own right. The villains also had evil counterparts called Rex. The show would have featured robotic creatures like Terratech and Fliptech, along with villainous machines like Aquarek and Carnarek. These mechanical creatures gave the series a futuristic toy line hook while still keeping the fantasy foundation of the original. This was smart because it allowed Masters of the Universe to evolve with the 90s. By then, kids were surrounded by franchises with vehicles, robots, morphing teams, mutants, ninjas, and sci-fi tech. A new Hero series needed more than swords and sorcery to compete. Tex and Rex were clearly designed to give the franchise fresh visual energy. But even with the new technology and new characters, the core of the show remained very much Masters of the Universe. It was still about good versus evil, courage, friendship, transformation, destiny, and moral growth. In other words, it wasn't total reinvention, it was a generational sequel, and it might have worked. Why the Hero shows never happened. The cancellation of these Hero projects shows a pattern. Whenever Mattel or the people around Masters of the Universe tried to do something major with Hero, the timing was off. But it had less to do with Hero's potential and more to do with Mattel's business reality. After the massive success of the Masters of the Universe toy line and the animated series in the mid-80s, the franchise's popularity began to fade. Toy sales dropped sharply after their peak, and by 1987, the brand was no longer the unstoppable force it had been just a few years before. One often cited figure says Masters of the Universe's toy sales dropped from around $400 million in 1986 to roughly $7 million the following year. Whether every exact number varies by source or not, the larger point is clear. The collapse was dramatic, and there were several reasons. The 1987 live-action Masters of the Universe movie failed to revive the brand the way Mattel needed. The toy line had also expanded aggressively, flooding stores with new figures and vehicles while older stock was still sitting on the shelves. In 1984 and 1985, Mattel kept releasing large waves of new characters, but eventually the market just couldn't absorb them all. The Powers of Grayskull line came at the worst possible time. It introduced new lore and new dinosaurs and new concepts without a fully established animated show to support it. The Hero figure never even made it to mass release. Mattel realized that the He-Man name alone was not enough to guarantee success anymore. That made the company more cautious about investing heavily in sequels or spin-off shows built around new characters. There was also the problem of the changing 90s audience. Kids of the new decade were moving towards shows like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, G.I. Joe, Transformers, and other action-heavy franchises with different kinds of mythology and energy. A simple sword and sorcery continuation may have felt old-fashioned unless it was reinvented very carefully. So even though the Hero concepts were interesting, they were fighting against bad timing, brand fatigue, market oversaturation, and changing children's entertainment landscapes. And that's a lot for one jumble-raised heir to carry. Hero returns in the toy line. Although Hero never got his own animated series, Mattel didn't forget him. In 2009, Mattel released a Hero action figure for the Masters of the Universe Classics line. This was a major moment for collectors because it finally gave the long-lost character an official modern figure after decades of being known mostly through prototypes and canceled plans. The figure was sold in limited quantities as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive and later made available online through Matty Collector. This release brought back the magic version of the character and reestablished him as a powerful figure from Eternia's ancient past. In this classic-style lore, Hero is connected to King Grayskull and the ancient legacy of the Power Sword. He wasn't treated as the jumble-raised son of He-Man from the 1996 pitch. Instead, he returned closer to the Powers of Grayskull idea, a heroic wizard tied to the mythic past of Eternia. Later, Super 7 continued parts of the collector-fused MOTU line and also helped keep obscure characters and prototypes alive through releases and tributes aimed at fans. That's one of the most interesting things about Hero. He failed as a mainstream cartoon lead, but survived as a collectible legend. Hero in modern Masters of the Universe lore. Hero also found his way back into modern MOTU storytelling. One major version appeared in the Masters of the Universe Revelations comic tie-in, which served as a prequel to the Netflix animated series. In that story, He-Man travels back into an ancient Eternia and crosses paths with King Grayskull's era. This continuity introduced Prince Ro, one of King Grayskull's sons. After the death or loss of his brother Dare, Ro eventually becomes the warrior known as Hero. That version connects Hero directly to the ancient Grayskull bloodline and makes him part of the deep mythic history behind the Power Salute. The Netflix continuity also gave Hero a brief animated presence, finally allowing a version of the character to appear on screen after decades of canceled plans. That's a strangely satisfying arc. Hero began as an unproduced action figure, an abandoned concept, then returned as a collection figure, then found his way into modern comics and animation. He never became the next He-Man the way Mattel once imagined, but he did become part of the mythology, and maybe that's the best kind of comeback for a character like this. Could Hero have worked? Before looking ahead to Hero's future, let's ask the big question. What would have happened if the sequel show had actually been made? Would fans have loved it or hated it? There's no definitive way to know, but based on fan discussions over the years, the concept still has a strange appeal. Some fans are fascinated by the idea of seeing older versions of Adam, Teela, Man-at-Arms, Orko, and the rest of the classic cast. Others love the idea of Eternia moving forward and passing the Power Sword to a new generation. The generational angle could have given the franchise a sense of growth that many 80s cartoons never really attempted. The new characters also have cult appeal. Fans still talk about characters like Kayla, Airbag, Forklift, Battlebird, and the Tex because they feel like toy line ideas from an alternate timeline. They're weird, but they're very Masters of the Universe. Of course, not everyone would have liked it. Some fans may have rejected a story where Adam no longer carries the Power Sword as the main hero. Some may have disliked the idea of Hero replacing He-Man, or the idea that Dare's real parentage was kept secret. Others may have felt the franchise had already tried and failed to move forward with the new adventures of He-Man. But that's exactly what makes the project interesting. It was risky. It wasn't just another reboot. It was a legacy sequel before legacy sequels became popular. It wanted to ask what happens when the hero grows older, becomes king, and has to decide whether to share the power that defined his life. That is a surprisingly modern idea. If executed well, Hero, son of He-Man and Masters of the Universe, might have stood its ground among the action cartoon franchises of the 90s. It might not have become a giant hit, but it could have kept Eternia alive in a new form. Instead, it became one of the great Masters of the Universe what-ifs. So what happened to Hero? First, he was imagined as an ancient wizard in Powers of Grayskull. Then he was reworked as the son of He-Man in a late 80s sequel concept. Then Lou Scheimer reimagined him again in 1996 as Dare, a jungle-raised boy adopted by Adam and Teela, secretly connected to She-Ra's bloodline and destined to inherit the Power Sword. Every version had potential. Every version arrived at the wrong time. The MOTU brand was fading. Mattel was cautious. Kids had moved on to newer action franchises, and the industry wasn't ready to gamble on a generational He-Man sequel built around a new hero. But Hero did not disappear completely. He returned through toys, collector lore, comics, and modern animation. And now, with MOTU back in the spotlight again, maybe this lost hero has a better chance than ever of finally being able to step out of the footnotes. Maybe in the future, Hero won't remain just a canceled action figure or a forgotten Bible or a strange piece of franchise trivia. Maybe one day he'll finally get the cartoon he was always meant to have. So that's all from my side. What's your opinion on Hero, the son of He-Man in the Masters of the Universe? Would you have liked to watch the show? Let us know in the comments below. Also, if you like what we do here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and then ring that notification bell so that when I come up with a new crazy He-Man theory, I can tell you all about it. We'll see you real soon. You guys stay safe. Remember, you have the power, and stay marvelous.